The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. You win up to 325 times your entry with their new Pick 8. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash on Nordic Fantasy, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get the best dad-driven props and picks from Rhythm. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com. So that's Rhythm, sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently Monday morning, early Monday morning, roughly midnight Eastern Time on June 17th. I'm Rosso, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode, bit of a longer one, as we do have two tournaments to preview, two important grass events, in fact, two 500s. So looking forward to breaking down Halle and London. We're going to break down both of them, starting with Halle and with London. We do have quarter odds, so we are going to go through quarters and outrights for each event. Before we continue that, though, do want to recap what happened in the Sunday action. Starting off with the lock and dog picks. Overall, decent episode. Unfortunately, the sweep continues to elude us, but we have been doing pretty well recently, either with the locks or the dogs. So we've basically been breaking even for the last week or so. Ended up winning. The lock, though, had Korda over 1.5 breaks at minus 135 in his match against de Minaur. That one was, I don't want to say a miracle, but definitely a nice sweat, as Korda had 0 breaks entering the second set. Then he ended up breaking early in the second set to go down 1-2. So he ended up being down 2-0, got a break back, and then ended up having 4 break points in the 2-4 game. So we thought that we were going to get it there. It was a low 40, 4 break points. He failed. Then de Minaur 2 match points while returning Korda's serve at 3-4. Ended up, at a 5-2, and ended up seeing Korda fight those 2 points off. Then he held. We had one last game to get the break, and he came through. Ended up breaking when he was down 3-5. Ended up losing eventually, ironically, by getting broken back to lose the match. But either way, point is Korda needed to get a break in one of the 2 final service games for de Minaur. Ended up choking the first one away, but he ended up avenging it, and he made up for it as he ended up getting the break in the last possible moment to cash us the lock. Either way, though, for the dog, ended up picking up a loss, had the over 10.5 games in the Berrettini and Draper match. Kind of annoying because we picked the overall script of the match correctly, thought it'd be a marathon, and thought that there would be at least one breaker. There was in the second set. Unfortunately, though, Draper did get broken in the first set relatively early on, as Berrettini did win the first set 6-3. So a bit of unfortunate piece of, I'd say, just overall bad serving by Draper, but that was the only time he got broken in the entire match. So unfortunately, he kind of just had one really bad service game, and then he was phenomenal from that point forward. So pretty unfortunate for us, but it's what it is. Either way, look for a sweep here with the first round matches in London and in Halle. Either way, though, point is overall definitely an interesting collection of matches on Sunday. You had one that was pretty straightforward and one that was very, very just overall competitive. So to go through briefly what happened there. So for starters, I accidentally had a typo there. Draper and de Minaur ended up winning titles. We had Berrettini at 14-1 to win in Stuttgart, up a set, and he also had a break point there at 5-5, which would have been very nice to get in the second set, which means if Berrettini converted one of the 2 breakpoint chances he had in that 5-5 game, he would have been serving for the match. Unfortunately, could not convert, and then eventually Draper did win the second set via tiebreak. Then Berrettini had a break point in the 3-2 game in the third set, did not convert, and then Draper broke immediately the game after. So Berrettini had a chance on 2 separate occasions to go up a break, and he unfortunately couldn't do it. So either way, picked up a loss there for the outright. Good performance by Draper, though. Did mention the over in that match, and I did mention that I liked potentially hedging the Berrettini future with Draper at plus money. And if you did, then you ended up making like 7 units, give or take. Point is, though, Draper did get the job done. I believe that's his first ever ATP title. He had a loss in a couple of finals, but now he officially got over the hump, so congrats to him for getting the job done. As for the de Minaur match, even though Korda did cash us the lock in miraculous fashion, Korda was not very good in the match on Sunday. Simply put, his serve was not good enough. It seemed like de Minaur was all over his serve for the entire match, and Korda just got smacked. Should have been more lopsided. I mentioned before, de Minaur was up a break and eventually a double break in the or was it a double break? Or sorry, he was up a break early in the second set. Then he was up a break again later in the set. So it was not actually a double break, but he was up a break on two separate occasions. Point is, though, Korda ended up getting broken 5 times, and you saw de Minaur just outserve him. You ended up seeing de Minaur win 77% of the first serve points. Korda won 55 by comparison, and you ended up seeing Korda have to fight off 14 breakpoint chances, and he only fought off 9 of them. As for de Minaur, he only faced 6 breakpoints. Did he get broken twice? So either way, point is de Minaur just outplayed him and ended up winning another title. So congrats to de Minaur and Draper, and we'll get into the actual tournaments in a second for the upcoming week. Before into that, though, do want to remind you once again to like, subscribe on YouTube. Also, a reminder, don't forget to rate and review the podcast on Spotify or Apple. So no matter how you can actually support the show, you can do it on different platforms. You can do it either on YouTube or even with audio-only podcast formats of Spotify and Apple. A reminder also, don't forget to check out the SGPN merch store because we have a lot of great merchandise for the Tennis Gambling Podcast. We have shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs. Don't forget to check that out and get yourself something if you do like the selection that we have. A reminder also that there are other shows with the network, and all of them basically have merchandise on the SGPN store. And a reminder that the countdown to football season is on, and SGPN has you covered because the College Football Experience is doing individual team previews for every single college football team. Plus, SGPN's 5-Minute Fantasy Football is your quick podcast to get you prepped for all things fantasy. So once again, if you are looking to get into football, whether it involves college or the NFL for the upcoming seasons, don't forget to check out those 2 podcasts because maybe your fantasy draft's coming up around the corner and you want to make sure you are prepared. Anyway, time to get into the actual tournaments that we're going to talk about for the upcoming week. Starting off with Halle. Once again, these are 2 separate ATP 500 events, so it is a ramp up in terms of, I'd say, prestige, because we ended up seeing 250s last week, now a 500, so the overall field is definitely solid in both events. Now, to go through the recent winners in Halle, Bublik actually won last year as he beat Zverev in the final. Hurkacz beat Medvedev the year prior, and Humbert ended up beating Rublev in the final a couple years ago. So Humbert, you might not have expected to actually win a title here, but he has, so keep that in mind. A point is, I do think you're going to end up seeing a pretty fun tournament, and we do have a lot of finalists and recent winners in the field for this tournament. So starting off with the actual first quarter, we're going to look at Sinner as the favorite at minus 200. You have Tsitsipas at 4-1, Struff at 4-1, Greek Sport 14-1. So Fulin at 14-1, not going to bother with Squire or with Darderi. So Sinner, I think, is going to win the quarter. I'm not going to spend much time on it. I think Tsitsipas is fine on grass, but I think Sinner is just the better player. And we know Tsitsipas can still be untrustworthy against elite competition. So I think Sinner will eventually get the job done in this one. Give Alcaraz a serious run for his money. Alcaraz eventually won the French Open. I know it's a different surface. Point is, though, Sinner was in good form in the French Open, despite having the injury concerns entering it, and now he had some time off. And he's a solid grass player. I think he's in line for a good showing here. So I think Sinner will end up getting the job done. As for the other members of the quarter, I really don't have much else. I found a minus 188, by the way, on Sinner if you do want that. Point is, I don't really trust Struff because I'm concerned about his overall health. We know that he ended up withdrawing from the previous event due to illness, which kind of screwed over outrights. But the point is, Struff, I'm not sure if he's fully healthy. Greek Sport, I think, is fine, but I do think Sinner would beat him. Sinner's done very well in the head-to-head against Greek Sport this year and in general. So give me Sinner by himself at minus 188 into the first quarter. For the second quarter, you have a pretty interesting one. You have Medvedev at minus 120. You have Bublik, the defending champion, at 3-1. Eubanks at 5-1. Tell you what, Eubanks might be decent on grass, but Eubanks at 5-1 tells you just how bad this quarter is. This quarter is really not very good. Zhang is 10-1. Martinez is 18-1. Offner's 18-1, and Borges is 25-1. So looking at the actual back half of the odds here for the second quarter, this quarter sucks. There's really not many options for me. Bublik would be interesting, but he did end up retiring in that match against Musetti last week. So I am concerned about his overall fitness as well. And I think because of that, Medvedev is in line for a pretty good showing here. Mentioned before, Medvedev did make a final and ended up losing in the final to Hurkacz. But I know that he has made deep runs here before. He's a solid grass player, pretty underrated in that aspect. And I do think that Medvedev at minus 120, with a pretty weak overall quarter, it is very weak in my opinion. And we know Bublik has not had much success against Medvedev especially with the double faulting issues and the fact that Medvedev does have a good serve and a lot of patience, and Bublik does struggle in that area. But I think Eubanks is not good enough. I think Zhang is an underrated option at 10-1, but I probably wouldn't pick him to actually win the event, or win the quarter, anyway. Martinez is a clay specialist. Offner's not very good this year, and Borges is not really known for his grass expertise. Price of elimination, though, give me Medvedev at -120. I think it's a good price, so I will take him in this one. Moving on to the third quarter, you have a lot of interesting options. You have Hurkacz at +140. You have Rublev at +240. You have Berrettini at 250. Giron at 18-1, who had a decent run last week. You had Fonseca, the young Brazilian talent, who is 18-1, and you have Caboli at 80-1. Now, Hurkacz is a former champion. Rublev, though, has made the finals twice, so he has made some deep runs here before. The question is, do I think that Hurkacz should actually be a +140 option in this tournament for the quarter? And I do. I think that looking at his overall serve, we know he has the best serve on the entire tour, and the fact that his serve is translated well here and that he's a good grass player, I think makes him a very dangerous option in the event, not just for the quarter, but to potentially win the entire thing. Now, Hurkacz and Rublev have had a couple of really competitive head-to-head matches. I believe it's 3-2 in favor of Hurkacz. Hurkacz did win the last head-to-head meeting last year in, I believe it was the final of an event, and Hurkacz 1-3. So that might be a coin flip, but I think Hurkacz is the better grass player, in my opinion, than Rublev. It is pretty close, but I think Hurkacz's serve, and the fact that he has won here before, tells me that he might be worth taking as a +140 option. Now, for the second option, though, I am going to go with Rublev at +240. He did make two finals here. I wasn't going to automatically put all my eggs in the Hurkacz basket. I think Rublev can definitely beat Hurkacz in a match, which is why I think it might be a 50-50 toss-up between the two of them. So as a result, I am going to go with both. Berrettini, I know, made the final in Stuttgart. We backed him to win the event. The issue, though, is Berrettini really has not played many matches over the last couple of weeks, and now he has to play a 500 after making the final and having to play on Sunday. It is not exactly a great spot for Berrettini, and fatigue could play a factor in this matchup, or matches, I should say. So for me, Berrettini at 250, I get, but with the lack of rest and recovery, I just have too many question marks for Berrettini based on his limited workload so far this season. I'm not sure his body's going to hold up, so as a result, I am going to go with other options as opposed to Berrettini. So once again, on my picks for the third quarter, I am going to go with Hurkacz at +140 and Rublev at +240. Moving on to the last quarter in the event, you have Zverev as the favorite, as the home country guy at -105. You have Felix at +450, Sonego at 650, Fees at 7-1, Makic at 10-1, Kekmanovic at 10-1, and Kempfer at 14-1. Two names I'm tossing out automatically. No chance I take Sonego and no chance I take Fees. Both guys have been really bad so far this year. Sonego in particular has been a mess. So I'm not going to go near either of those guys. I think those odds are actually off. I think Makic is dangerous. He has a good serve, and I do think he can maybe make a deep run in this event. But in reality, I do think Zverev will win the quarter. He made the final last year, so he has some unfinished business. He also just lost in the French Open final, so maybe he will be eager to start playing again after having to dwell on that 5-set loss about a week ago. But I think you're looking at Zverev at -105 being a good option. Made the final last year. He's a pretty solid grass player, better on clay, but still, I think Zverev is going to be the worthy favorite in this overall quarter. Felix can maybe make it interesting, but I doubt it. I still don't really trust him. Just a lot of, I'd say, guys that I don't fully believe in to make deep runs, and I don't trust on a regular basis. So that being the case, give me Zverev, who's actually been in solid form recently, and he has been in good form in the event in the past in front of his home country fans. Give me Zverev at -105. As for the outright picks, though, to win the event, going to read off the odds for those quickly. So you have Sinner at +140. You have Zverev at 450. Once again, shop around. You have Medvedev at 5-1. Hurkacz at 10-1. Rublev at 10-1. Berrettini at 12-1. Tsitsipas at 14-1. Struff at 16-1. Bublik at 20-1. Felix at 35-1. And I think that's basically going to do it for people that I think, in theory, have a chance to win it. Now, to go through the actual outrights, give me Sinner at +140. Not going to overthink this. Sinner, I think, is a top 2 player in the world right now, especially based on Djokovic's form so far this year. So Sinner and Alcaraz, definitely the 1-2 in some form. Sinner just became number 1 in the world, so he might be trying to, have a bit of a chip on his shoulder to actually maintain that ranking to prove to others that he's worthy of being the number 1 player in the world ranking-wise, especially after Alcaraz beat him in the French Open semis. But Sinner's a good grass player, and he's an overall elite player in general. I think he's worthy of being one of the favorites, especially at a plus 140 option. I'll go with Sinner at plus 140. For my second choice, I am going to go with Zverev. I found a 5-1. Made the final last year. Mentioned before that I'm not exactly sold on his quarter. I think he has a relatively easy quarter in general. I'm not sold on Felix, Sonego, Fees, or anybody like that. So I think that Zverev has a very manageable quarter, and I do think he is getting a pretty nice perk of being on the opposite side of the bracket as Sinner and Medvedev. So I'd rather take somebody from the third and fourth quarters who I think will be able to at least delay facing off against Sinner and maybe getting lucky if Sinner loses early on. Point is, though, I think that Zverev can, in theory, make a match very competitive against Sinner if that was the potential matchup in the final. But I do like 5-1 with the home country guy who made the final last year at this price. And moving on to the last option, I am going to go with Hurkacz at 10-1. Former champion, great server, and once again, he is in the bottom half. So I'm picking Sinner, and I'm not picking anybody else in that top half, including Medvedev. I think Medvedev, at the end of the day, just can't beat Sinner anymore. He used to own him in the head-to-head. Now Sinner has kind of dominated it as he's flipped the script on that. And I do think that Medvedev would lose to Sinner on grass if they faced off against each other. So with that being the case, I'm not going to touch Medvedev, and I do think that Sinner is the only option I'm considering for the top half. That does make the bottom half interesting, though, with Hurkacz, in my opinion, who is the favorite to win this quarter, who I think has a very, very, I'd say, unique weapon that a lot of guys don't have here, which is the elite serve. Berrettini in his quarter probably has the same weapon, but I think Hurkacz is more reliable. And I mentioned before, Berrettini's fatigue and lack of recovery could be an issue for the event. So I think that Zverev and Hurkacz have pretty reasonable quarters. Hurkacz is harder because Rublev's there, but I do think you're looking at what should be a matchup between Sinner and either Hurkacz and Zverev in the final. So the point is, I do think there's some value, especially at 10-1 for this price on a former champion. So once again, my outright picks for Halle. The first quarter odds, I'm going to go with Sinner at minus 188 is my only choice. Second quarter, I'm going to go with Medvedev at minus 120 in what is a really, really weak quarter. Third quarter, going to be Hurkacz at plus 140 and Rublev at plus 240. And for the fourth quarter, I am going to go with Zverev by himself at minus 105. For the outrights, give me Sinner at plus 140. Give me Zverev at 5-1. And give me Hurkacz at 10-1. Before we get into any of the preview for London, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy because their Pick 8 is now live for the NBA Finals. Create entries up to 8 picks, and Underdog will automatically double flex your entries, so you can miss up to 2 picks and still win your entry. With more picks to make and more ways to win, the excitement is higher than ever, and the best part, you can win up to 325 times your original entry. You can now use specials and boost on all flexed entries. I'll probably end up using a play on Luka first quarter points in my Pick 8 entry. Personally, don't miss out on your chance before it is gone. Might be gone after tomorrow or after Monday, because if the Celtics win one more game, the season is over. A reminder there. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to $50 in bonus cash on our fantasy promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing Halle. Now it's time to get into London. So starting off with the recent winners in London, you had Alcaraz, who beat de Minaur last year. Berrettini actually won the 2 times before that, which makes it interesting why Berrettini's playing in Germany as opposed to England, because he has been a champion here multiple times. So I am kind of wondering why Berrettini decided to play in Halle. I'm assuming it's based on travel, because he was in Stuttgart, so he probably didn't want to travel outside the country. Either way, though, point is, it is a bit surprising based on Berrettini's success that he chose Halle over Queen's Club. Either way, though, point is Alcaraz is the defending champion, and he is back to potentially defend the title. As for the actual odds here, to go through the quarters once again, first quarter, to go through the odds there, you have Alcaraz at minus 200, Draper at 4-1, fresh off of the title in Den Bosch. You have fresh off the title in Stuttgart. Apologies. You have Paul at 5-1. You have Fekina at 11-1. Tabilo at 22-1. Cerundolo at 22-1. And Navone and Baez have no chance. So I'm going with Alcaraz by himself at minus 200. He's defending champion. Just won the French Open. Won Wimbledon last year. No reason for me to expect anybody to beat him here. Draper, similar issue that I have with Berrettini, because I do think that Draper's, I'd say, fitness has been an issue over the years. And now he's off a title. and he hasn't had any time to recover. Not exactly a great spot. It might be a pretty decent tournament to maybe fade Berrettini and Draper, potentially. Point is, though, I'm not trusting him to make a deep run after winning a title because we know Draper's fitness and stamina have been a serious issue over the years. So it actually not shock me if Draper potentially retired midway through the event. That wouldn't totally shock me. Point is, though, I do think Alcaraz is a class above everyone here, and you're looking at Paul, who I think is a decent grass player, but I think Alcaraz would beat him. I know Paul and Alcaraz have had some fun head-to-head meetings, but Paul, I do think, is not equipped to actually handle Alcaraz on grass. So I think Alcaraz would beat him if they were to hypothetically match up. But simply put, give me the defending champion at minus 200 as my only choice for the first quarter. Moving on to the second quarter, a couple of fun options here. So you have to go through the options here. You have Dimitrov at plus 190. You have Korda at 350. Tiafoe at 450. You have Humbert at 5-1, Khachanov at 6-1, Arnaldi at 12-1, and Manarino at 18-1. So Dimitrov, I am going to go with at plus 190. I think that he's a solid grass player. He's been in good form this year, and I do like his variety, and I think it can cause a lot of guys in his quarter problems. Now, Korda, I thought about, but similar issue to Draper. They both just faced off, or they both just played on Sunday in a final in a 250. Now immediate turnaround for a 500. I'm not exactly sold on taking Korda after having a deep tournament run last week, and now he has to do it all over again. Not sold on that prospect. I'm going to fade Korda, especially at plus 350. Tiafoe, absolutely not. Get the hell out of my face. Tiafoe, I think, is just not very good. And I think 450 is an embarrassing price. Humbert is at 5-1. Now, that I actually like. I think Humbert at 5-1 is value. We mentioned before Humbert has actually won a grass title or two on the ATP level. So I do think that Humbert is capable of getting the job done. He looks pretty good in the last event in Den Bosch, and unfortunately for him, he had to finish his match against Brouwer and then had to face off against De Minaur, eventually won the title on the same day. Not a great scheduling spot for Humbert, so I just thought the weather kind of screwed him over in that one. But 5-1, I think his odds should definitely be, I'd say, lower than Tiafoe or Korda's, because I think Humbert is more reliable. Definitely lower than Tiafoe's. I think Korda, you can argue, has been in good form. Okay, that maybe his odds make sense being lower. But Tiafoe at 450, I think, is an insane price, and there's no way I'm going to take it because I definitely don't trust Tiafoe at all to win multiple matches in a row, let alone enough to win a quarter. So give me, as my two picks for the second quarter, Dimitrov at 190 and Humbert at 5-1. Moving on to the third quarter, you have what should be an absolute war. You have Fritz at 220. You have Rune at 3-1. You have Raonic at 5-1. You have Norrie at 8-1. Murray at 9-1, and Thompson at 11-1. What a really fun quarter. Now, I think Fritz makes sense of being the favorite because he is a very solid grass player. However, I do think Rune is being slept on, especially with his grass skills. I believe he made the Wimbledon quarterfinals last year, and we know that he is definitely a solid overall player on any surface. But the path is very easy for Rune compared to the other guys. So Fritz, for example, plays Daniel in the first round, which is a pretty easy match for him. Then in the second round, he faces off against either Raonic or Norrie, which is not an easy match, especially Raonic. That could be difficult with the serves. So that being the case, not exactly an easy second match for Fritz. As for Rune, though, he is Thompson in the first round. Thompson's pretty good on grass, but he's been in really bad form for the last couple of months. And then he faces off against the winner of either Papirin or Murray. So I think Rune has a much easier path than Fritz, Raonic, and Norrie. So that being the case, I'm going to skip Fritz. I'm going to let those guys kill each other, and hopefully Rune feasts on the scraps. I think Rune should be able to beat Thompson. He should be able to beat Papirin or Murray, and I think 3-1 is a very good deal while fading the very difficult section at the bottom. So give me Rune at 3-1 because of it as my only pick for the third quarter. For the fourth quarter, though, you have De Minaur, fresh off a title, at plus 120. You have Shelton at 450, Nakashima at 550, Musetti at 10-1, Echeverry at 11-1, Evans at 11-1, and Harris at 20-1. So I mentioned before, fatigue's been an issue for some guys for this event in my prediction. So I am going to be skipping Korda, and I'm going to be skipping, for example, Berrettini. But I do think at the end of the day, De Minaur has proven time and time again his stamina is up there in the elite category, and he is the defending runner-up of the event. I like him at plus 120. I think the quarter's pretty weak. I mean, if you're going through the names once again, who really scares you? The second lowest odds is Ben Shelton, who has really not been in great form for the last couple of weeks. Nagashima was gifted a spot in the semis because Zverev and Struff ended up getting injured, or I should say, withdrew from the event. And Nagashima ended up losing handily to Draper in the semis. But I think Nakashima's not exactly a great grass player. He's fine. I think de Minaur's better. Musetti had a decent run, but then Berrettini killed him. I just think de Minaur's better than Musetti as well. Echeverry, I'm not going to take. He's not exactly known for being a great grass player. Evans has not been in good form this year. I like Evans a lot. It's his home country. I get it. But I do think that 11-1 is not exactly a great deal, especially based on the draw for Evans, who has Nakashima in the first round, and then probably de Minaur. Not exactly a great draw there for the second round. And I mentioned Shelton before being the second lowest odds. I do not have odds on Pericard, but that is the first round match. So Shelton and Pericard might kill each other in a bunch of breakers. So I think that match is actually very close. I think Shelton should win, but I do think Shelton could, in theory, get upset in the first round. So I really don't like the path of anybody, especially near the top, except for de Minaur at plus 120. So I'm going to go with him, but I am going to go with a super long shot, an option, a home country option that I think has a good draw. So I am going to go with Harris, actually, at plus 2,000. Now, some of you might not know who Billy Harris is. Pretty solid server, pretty tall British guy. But his overall path is not bad. It's a matchup against Echeverry. The lines are actually very close on that one. Echeverry has not played since the French Open. Not exactly known for being a solid grass player. I think Harris could get the job done there. He has been playing some grass challenger events in preparation, so he should look sharper in the first round. Mentioned before, Shelton and Pericard are against each other in the first round as well, so they might kill each other, and Harris can serve. So you might end up getting a tiebreak fest there between either Harris and Shelton or Harris and Pericard, which in theory, Harris has more than a puncher's chance of winning. So I think that his overall path to the quarters is not bad. Would he beat de Minaur? Probably not. But I think plus 2,000 for a draw that favorable, at least compared to the other guys in his section. Him at 2,000 compared to Evans at 11-1 when Evans would have to face off against de Minaur in the second round, I think is a pretty bad misprice. So because of that, I am going to go with Harris as my super long shot at plus 2,000. As for the actual outright picks, to go through the odds there, you have Alcaraz as the favorite to repeat at plus 110. De Minaur at 7-1. Rune at 11-1. Shop around. Dimitrov is 11-1 as well. You have Fritz at 11-1. Draper at 12-1. Shelton at 20-1. Paul at 20-1. Court at 22-1. Raonic at 25-1. Khachanov, by the way, is 28-1. You have Tiafoe at 35-1, and you kind of get the point. So to go through my options, I am going to go with Alcaraz at plus 110, defending champion, defending Wimbledon champion, won the French Open as well. Great form, solid grass player, good enough for me. I'll take him at plus 110. I am going to go with de Minaur to win his second title in as many weeks, as I think that 7-1 is a good price for a guy with a pretty weak quarter. I'm taking Harris on the slim chance that de Minaur is fatigued and maybe doesn't have it, or maybe Harris's serve is just on that day and is able to potentially avoid getting broken many times. But I think that at the end of the day, de Minaur is good enough to get the job done, and he's the defending runner-up. So give me de Minaur at 7-1. And my last pick, I mentioned before that Rune was 11-1. I found 16-1, which I think is pretty appealing. Now, Rune did make a pretty deep run here last year before losing to de Minaur. Ended up making it to I believe it was the semis last year. So the point is he ended up having a good showing here. He's a solid grass player, and I do think that his overall quarter is difficult on paper, but his draw within the quarter is pretty favorable because you're looking at Fritz taking on either Raonic or Norrie in the second round, and Rune gets to feast on Thompson in the first round, then either Murray or Papirin. It's a very solid draw into the quarters, so with that being the case, I think he has a decent path to make it to the semis and beyond. Give me plus 1,600 for Rune, who I think is just too talented to be put at that price point. So once again, my overall outrights for London. The first quarter, I'm going to go with, just pulling it up once again. Alcaraz at a minus 200. I just think he's the class of the quarter by a wide margin. Second quarter, I'm going to go with two options. Give me Dimitrov at 190 and give me Humbert at 5-1. For the third quarter, give me Rune by himself at plus 300. And for the fourth quarter, I am going to go with two options. Give me de Minaur at plus 120, and give me a sprinkle on Harris at plus 2,000 as the local guy who I think has a pretty decent draw. Now, anyway, and the outrights, by the way, to win the event, give me Alcaraz at plus 110, give me de Minaur at 7-1, and give me Rune at 16-1. That's going to wrap it up there for the outrights. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks for the actual matches. But before we continue that, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Rhythm, because if you are betting on NBA player props, then you need to download Rhythm, because Rhythm is the go-to sports betting tool that transforms complex data into actionable insights, empowering bettors with smarter data-driven decisions. Unlike other platforms, Rhythm does combine advanced predictive analytics with an intuitive user experience, making betting both easier and more enjoyable. Rhythm's predictive models are from MIT data scientists and quants with over 3 years of data that help you become better bettors by giving you better AI-backed betting decisions. Rhythm's also great at identifying value on bench players. Rhythm was all over Hauser's over 5.5 points in Game 4, which got there with ease. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportscampodcast.com. Rhythm, sportscampodcast.com/RITHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing the 2 upcoming 500 events in Halle and in London. Now it's time for the actual lock and dog picks. For the lock on the show, I am going to go to a matchup that I think might be flying under the radar, and it does involve a guy that we've had issues trusting in the past, but he's been in good form lately, and he did cash us a couple of bets recently, so he's kind of on our good side. It will be a matchup taking place, by the way, on Tuesday, so no rush. It's going to be a Tuesday morning match in Halle, and I am going to go to the Tsitsipas match against Squire. I'm going to go with a team total. Give me Squire under 9.5 on the team total at -120. Coverings why I'm going to take this. First of all, Squire not exactly in great form. He's won less than 7 games in back-to-back matches, lost to Hanfmann in straight sets handily on clay, and then played against Richard and lost that one handily on grass. So the point is, Squire's not exactly in good form. He also has been in Halle before and has not done very well. He is 1-2 lifetime in Halle, only 0-1 on the main draw. So he has gone through qualifying, mixed results, 1 win, 1 loss, and he is 0-1 in the main draw, and he's not been in good form. And now he's against Tsitsipas, who I do think is a solid enough grass player to get the job done. Plus Tsitsipas' experience with Halle courts, because he has been here for the last 2 years. So I think that he should be able to look somewhat comfortable. His serve, I think, is better than Squire's, and I do think even though the backhand and the returning have been an issue so far this season, Tsitsipas lost to Alcaraz in the French Open. Not really, no shame in that. He got buried, but still, Alcaraz eventually won the event. Point is, I think Tsitsipas, despite having a really bad start to the season, was able to pick it up recently with his form over the last couple of weeks, and I think that with that being the case, he should be good enough to avoid losing 10-plus games to Squire. I see a pretty straightforward match. Even if it goes to a breaker, you still have the 6-3 draw in the second set to send it under. I see a 6-4, 6-3 type final, if I had to guess. But I think that Tsitsipas is just much better than Squire at the end of the day. And with that being the case, I do think that the team total of 9.5 is a very good number. I found 8.5, so 9.5 at -120 is a very good option. I'll go with that as my lock. For my dog, I am going to go to another matchup taking place on Tuesday between Rune and Thompson. And for this one, I am going to go with Rune to win in straight sets at +115. Thompson, after winning a title in Mexico earlier this year, has been awful. He's actually lost 5 straight matches. Now, I know he's not a great clay player, did play on grass, got killed by Raonic. Point is, though, Thompson has not been in good form, and as a result, I think he's vulnerable to potentially get buried in this matchup. Now, Rune, I mentioned earlier, made the semis here last year, and actually won each of his first 3 matches to get to the semis in straight sets. So I think Rune can duplicate that. I think he should be able to dominate against a player that he's definitely better than, and against a guy that's not in good form. So I think Rune should be in line to look sharp, and I think that there is some value with him to win in straight sets at +115. Mostly a fade of Thompson. I know he's a solid grass player, but I think current form matters, and Thompson's current form is not exactly up to snuff. Give me Rune to win in straight sets at a pretty decent plus money price. So once again, my picks for the show, the lock's going to be on Squire, team total under 9.5 at -120 against Tsitsipas, and my dog will be on Rune to win in straight sets against Thompson at +115. That's going to wrap it up. A reminder that we will be back once again in a couple days to go through the quarters in Halle and in London. Until next time, though, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the MLB show. And find me on the WNBA show as well. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.